What if I told you that an HOA board's obsession with the wrong shade of beige paint led to their complete financial destruction? A homeowner walking away with nearly $1 million, and 3 board members facing criminal charges. This isn't fiction. This is the most insane HOA revenge story you'll ever hear, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why you should never underestimate a homeowner with a law degree, a photographic memory, and absolutely nothing to lose. Stick around because the twist at the 18-minute mark will blow your mind. But first, let me take you back to where this nuclear-level HOA war began. Our story takes place in Meadowbrook Estates, a planned community in suburban Texas that looked like paradise on the surface. Perfectly manicured lawns, Mediterranean-style homes, and amenities that included 2 pools, a fitness center, and a clubhouse that could host 200 people. But beneath this picture-perfect exterior lurked the most tyrannical HOA board in American history, and I'm not exaggerating. Meet David Richardson, a 42-year-old intellectual property attorney, who had just purchased his dream home in Meadowbrook Estates for $650,000. David was a widower raising his 12-year-old daughter Emma after losing his wife to cancer 3 years earlier. He chose Meadowbrook specifically because it seemed safe, family-friendly, and stable. The HOA fees were steep at $450 monthly, but David figured the amenities and maintained common areas justified the cost. He was about to discover that his monthly fees were funding something far more sinister than landscaping and pool maintenance. David moved in during late August, and everything seemed fine for the first 6 weeks. He followed every rule in the HOA handbook, kept his lawn pristine, and even volunteered for the community garage sale committee. His daughter Emma made friends quickly, and for the first time since his wife's death, David felt like they were building a real home again. Then came the first violation notice. On October 15th, David found a violation notice zip-tied to his mailbox. The notice claimed that his house trim color was non-compliant with community standards and demanded he repaint within 30 days or face daily fines of $100. David was confused because he hadn't painted anything. His house was the exact same color scheme as when he'd purchased it just 2 months earlier, and the previous owners had lived there for 8 years without any issues. David attended the next HOA board meeting to address the confusion. This is where he met the trio that would become his nemesis for the next 18 months. Patricia Hendricks, the HOA president and a 63-year-old retired real estate agent who treated the HOA like her personal kingdom. Marcus Webb, the vice president and a property manager who saw every homeowner as a potential revenue source. And Diane Foster, the treasurer who had a mysterious habit of approving expensive contracts for companies owned by her relatives. At the meeting, David politely explained that he hadn't painted anything and requested clarification. Patricia's response was chilling. She pulled out a color swatch chart and pointed to 2 nearly identical beige samples. According to Patricia, David's trim was desert sand when it should be sandy desert. To the naked eye, even under bright light, the colors were absolutely indistinguishable. David asked if this was a joke. Patricia's face turned red, and she told David that if he questioned the board's authority again, she would personally ensure he regretted buying in Meadowbrook Estates. David, being an attorney, asked to see the specific covenant violation in writing with the exact paint code reference. Marcus Webb smirked and said the board didn't need to provide specific code references because they had discretionary authority over aesthetic decisions. This was David's first hint that something was deeply wrong. Every properly written HOA covenant has specific references to architectural standards, and boards absolutely do not have unlimited discretionary authority. That's not how property law works. David decided to do his homework. He requested copies of all HOA governing documents, financial records for the past 5 years, board meeting minutes, and the architectural guidelines. Under Texas Property Code, HOAs are required to provide these documents to homeowners within 10 business days of a written request. David sent his request via certified mail on October 20th. 30 days passed. No documents arrived. David sent a second request, this time citing the specific Texas Property Code sections that mandated disclosure. Another 30 days passed. Nothing. Now David's attorney instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. Legitimate HOA boards don't stonewall basic document requests. They especially don't stonewall document requests from attorneys who know exactly what they're legally entitled to receive. Meanwhile, the violation notices kept coming. In November, David received a notice claiming his mailbox post was 3 inches too tall. In December, he was cited for having his garage door open for longer than 15 minutes, even though he was actively unloading Christmas decorations. In January, he received a violation for a trash can that was allegedly visible from the street, even though it was in his side yard behind a fence. Each violation came with threats of $100 daily fines. David documented everything. He took time-stamped photographs, kept every notice, and started recording every interaction with board members. His legal training told him to build an evidence file, and that's exactly what he did. But he also decided to dig deeper into Meadowbrook's HOA finances because the stonewalling on document requests suggested possible corruption. Using public records requests and information available through the county clerk's office, David started piecing together Meadowbrook's financial picture. What he discovered was absolutely stunning. The HOA had 640 homes paying $450 monthly, generating $3,456,000 in annual revenue. For a community with basic amenities and minimal common areas, this seemed extraordinarily high. David found that Meadowbrook's landscaping contract was with Prestige Outdoor Solutions, a company owned by Diane Foster's brother-in-law, and the annual contract was for $780,000. David called competing landscaping companies and got quotes for comparable services. The average quote was $220,000. The HOA was overpaying by more than $500,000 annually for landscaping alone. The pool maintenance contract was with AquaClear Services, another company that turned out to be owned by Marcus Webb's cousin. Annual cost, $340,000. Market rate for comparable service, $90,000. Again, the HOA was hemorrhaging money to connected vendors. But the real bombshell was the property management fee. Meadowbrook paid Apex Community Management, Marcus Webb's own company, $420,000 annually to manage HOA operations. Industry standard for a community of Meadowbrook's size was roughly $80,000 to $120,000. Marcus was personally extracting more than $300,000 per year in excess fees. David calculated that between inflated contracts and self-dealing, the HOA board members and their associates were siphoning off approximately $1,200,000 annually from homeowner fees. Over the 5 years this board had been in power, they'd stolen roughly $6 million from the community. This wasn't just HOA tyranny. This was organized fraud. David knew he needed those official financial records to prove everything. So he hired an attorney who specialized in HOA disputes to make a formal demand. The attorney sent a letter in February citing multiple Texas property code violations and demanding the HOA comply with document disclosure requirements within 5 business days or face legal action. The board's response was to accelerate their harassment campaign against David. Within 1 week of the attorney's letter, David received 14 separate violation notices. His doormat was the wrong color. His house numbers were allegedly crooked. A decorative rock in his garden was supposedly a safety hazard. His window blinds were too visible from the street. The violations were absurd and contradicted the HOA's own guidelines, but each came with fine threats. Then Patricia Hendricks made a catastrophic mistake. She sent David a letter stating that his violations had accumulated to $12,000 in fines, and if he didn't pay within 15 days, the HOA would file a lien against his property and begin foreclosure proceedings. She also included a personal note. Perhaps Meadowbrook Estates isn't the right community for someone who can't follow simple rules. I suggest you sell your home and leave before this gets worse for you. David smiled when he read that letter because Patricia had just committed multiple violations of Texas HOA law and possibly criminal extortion. You cannot fine a homeowner without proper notice and hearing procedures. You cannot threaten foreclosure for alleged violations without following specific legal processes. And you absolutely cannot tell a homeowner to leave the community as punishment for requesting public records. Patricia had handed David a gift-wrapped piece of evidence that would eventually destroy her. In March, David filed a comprehensive lawsuit against the HOA, the 3 board members personally, and the vendor companies involved in the fraud scheme. The complaint was a masterpiece of legal documentation spanning 78 pages and including 243 exhibits. David alleged breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, embezzlement, self-dealing, violation of Texas HOA statutes, civil extortion, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The lawsuit demanded full financial disclosure, an independent audit, removal of all board members, appointment of a special master to oversee HOA operations, restitution of all illegally collected fines, compensatory damages, and punitive damages. David also filed a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office alleging theft and organized criminal activity. The lawsuit became public record, and David did something brilliant. He created a simple one-page flyer explaining the lawsuit's basic allegations, and put a copy in every single mailbox in Meadowbrook Estates. The flyer explained that homeowners were paying $450 monthly, but that roughly $150 of every payment was going to fraudulent contracts and self-dealing. Over a 30-year mortgage, each homeowner was losing approximately $54,000 to board corruption. The reaction was explosive. Within 48 hours, a homeowner coalition formed with 187 members. Within a week, David had been contacted by 43 homeowners who had their own horror stories of board retaliation, illegal fines, and harassment. Several homeowners had been threatened with foreclosure over minor alleged violations. One elderly couple had actually lost their home to HOA foreclosure over disputed fines totaling $8,000 for having the wrong shade of gray paint on their shutters. Patricia, Marcus, and Diane realized they were in serious trouble. Their response was to double down on attacking David while simultaneously trying to cover their tracks. They held an emergency board meeting and passed a resolution declaring David a vexatious litigant and banning him from all community amenities. They sent a letter to all homeowners claiming David's lawsuit was frivolous and motivated by his refusal to follow basic community rules. But they also did something incredibly stupid. They began destroying records. David's attorney had filed a motion for preliminary injunction demanding the preservation of all HOA documents and records. Despite this legal order, Marcus Webb's company began shredding old contracts and financial statements. They were caught because one of Marcus's own employees, disgusted by the corruption, took photos of the shredding operation and sent them to David's attorney. Destroying evidence after receiving a preservation order is called spoliation, and it's a serious legal violation that creates a presumption that the destroyed evidence was incriminating. The judge in David's case was furious. At a hearing in April, the judge issued sanctions against the HOA, ordered the board members to personally pay David's attorney fees for the spoliation motion, and granted David's request for expedited discovery. The expedited discovery was devastating for the board. David's forensic accountant subpoenaed 5 years of bank records, contracts, and vendor payments. The analysis confirmed David's initial estimates. The HOA board had engaged in a systematic scheme to funnel approximately $6.2 million to themselves and connected parties through inflated contracts and fraudulent billing. The landscaping company had billed for services never performed. The pool company had charged for chemical treatments and equipment that were never delivered. Marcus's management company had billed for administrative services at rates 5 times market value. The district attorney's office had initially been skeptical of David's criminal complaint, but once the forensic accounting evidence emerged, they opened a full investigation. In June, search warrants were executed at the homes and offices of all 3 board members. Investigators seized computers, financial records, and communications that revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. Text messages between Patricia and Marcus showed they had specifically targeted David for harassment after he requested financial documents. One message from Patricia read, "We need to make Richardson so miserable he sells and leaves. Hit him with violations daily. I want him gone before he costs us everything." Another message from Marcus to Diane said, "Make sure the audit shows clean numbers. Move the prestige overpayments to miscellaneous maintenance for now." These communications proved consciousness of guilt and showed the harassment campaign was retaliatory and intentional. Even worse for the board members, investigators found evidence they had used HOA funds for personal expenses. Patricia had charged $18,000 in personal vacation expenses to the HOA credit card, claiming they were business travel to HOA conferences that didn't exist. Marcus had billed the HOA for 72 hours of overtime in a single week, while his social media posts showed him vacationing in Cancun during that same period. In September, the district attorney announced criminal charges. Patricia Hendricks was charged with theft over $300,000, fraud, and tampering with government records. Marcus Webb faced charges of organized criminal activity, fraud, and money laundering. Diane Foster was charged with theft and abuse of fiduciary duty. All three faced potential prison sentences ranging from 5 to 20 years. As news of the criminal charges spread, Meadowbrook Estates homeowners organized a special election to recall the entire board. Under Texas law, homeowners can petition for recall elections if they gather signatures from 20% of the community. David's coalition gathered signatures from 74% of homeowners in just 11 days. At the recall election meeting in October, over 400 homeowners showed up, packing the clubhouse beyond capacity. The vote was overwhelming. 91% voted to remove Patricia, Marcus, and Diane from the board immediately. A new interim board was elected, composed entirely of homeowners who had no previous board experience, but who committed to transparency and accountability. The new board's first action was to hire an independent management company and terminate all contracts with vendors connected to the previous board. The landscaping contract was rebid and awarded to a reputable company for $215,000 annually, saving $565,000. The pool maintenance contract was rebid for $85,000, saving $255,000. Property management fees dropped to $95,000 annually, saving $325,000. In total, the new board immediately saved homeowners approximately $1,145,000 annually. They announced that HOA fees would be reduced from $450 to $275 monthly starting the following year, giving every homeowner an annual savings of $2,100. David's civil lawsuit went to mediation in November. By this point, the HOA's insurance company had gotten involved because the policy covered board member errors and omissions. The insurance company took one look at the evidence and told the HOA's defense attorneys to settle immediately, because they would lose catastrophically at trial. The mediation lasted 2 full days. David's attorney presented evidence of financial fraud, intentional harassment, emotional distress, and reputational damage. They had documentation of every violation notice, every threatening letter, and every instance of board misconduct. They also had David's testimony about the emotional impact on his daughter Emma, who had been bullied at school because of rumors spread by board members that David was a troublemaker trying to destroy the community. The settlement terms were extraordinary. The HOA agreed to pay David $847,000 in compensatory and punitive damages. All fines against David were voided and expunged from his property records. The HOA issued a formal written apology acknowledging that the violation notices were baseless and retaliatory. The HOA agreed to pay an additional $150,000 to fund legal representation for any homeowner who had been subjected to similar harassment, with David's attorney administering the fund. Patricia Hendricks, Marcus Webb, and Diane Foster were each personally required to contribute $50,000 to the settlement from their personal assets, and they were permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in Texas. They were also required to write personal apology letters to David. But David negotiated one more term that was absolutely brilliant. The settlement required the HOA to commission an independent historical audit of all board actions from the previous 10 years, and to publish the complete results to all homeowners. This audit would identify any other homeowners who had been victimized by illegal fines or foreclosures, and the HOA would be required to make full restitution. The historical audit, completed in January of the following year, revealed that the previous board had illegally fined 63 homeowners a total of $422,000 over spurious violations. The HOA refunded every penny with interest. 3 homeowners who had lost their homes to foreclosure were offered full restitution settlements, though the emotional damage of losing their homes could never be fully repaired. The criminal cases proceeded to trial. Marcus Webb, facing the most serious charges, took a plea deal and received 8 years in prison plus restitution orders totaling $1.4 million. Diane Foster pleaded guilty to reduced charges and received 5 years probation and community service, plus restitution of $780,000. Patricia Hendricks refused to plea and went to trial, where a jury convicted her on all counts after deliberating for less than 3 hours. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison. David Richardson used a portion of his settlement to establish a legal defense fund for HOA abuse victims across Texas. The fund has since helped 67 homeowners fight back against tyrannical boards. He also became an advocate for HOA reform legislation, working with state legislators to strengthen homeowner protections and increase transparency requirements for community associations. Emma Richardson, now a teenager, told her father that watching him stand up to bullies taught her the most important lesson of her life: that you should never let powerful people abuse you just because fighting back is difficult. David framed that conversation as the real victory, worth more than any settlement check. Meadowbrook Estates today is a transformed community. The new board operates with complete financial transparency, publishing detailed budgets and expense reports quarterly. Board meetings are recorded and posted online. Violation notices are issued only for genuine safety concerns or egregious rule violations, and homeowners have a formal appeals process with neutral arbitration. The community has become a model for ethical HOA governance. This story teaches us several crucial lessons about HOA tyranny and how to fight back. First, document everything. David's meticulous record-keeping was essential to his case. Every violation notice, every interaction, every piece of correspondence became evidence of the board's harassment campaign. Second, know your rights. David's legal background helped him understand that the board was violating state law and HOA bylaws. Homeowners should familiarize themselves with their state's HOA laws and their community's governing documents. Third, don't fight alone. David built a coalition of homeowners who shared similar experiences. There is power in numbers, and boards are much less likely to retaliate against organized groups than individual homeowners. Fourth, follow the money. Financial corruption is often at the heart of HOA tyranny. Boards that refuse to provide financial transparency usually have something to hide. Request audits, review budgets, and question suspicious contracts. Fifth, use the legal system strategically. David didn't just file a generic lawsuit. He assembled overwhelming evidence, involved criminal authorities, and pursued multiple legal theories simultaneously. This created pressure from all directions that the board couldn't withstand. Sixth, understand that insurance companies often drive settlements. Once the HOA's insurance company realized the board's conduct was indefensible, they forced a settlement to minimize their losses. Finally, remember that HOA board members are not above the law. They have fiduciary duties to homeowners, and they can be held personally liable for breaching those duties. Criminal prosecution is possible for theft, fraud, and embezzlement. Board members who think they're untouchable often learn otherwise when homeowners fight back with proper legal representation. The Meadowbrook Estates case represents one of the most comprehensive victories against HOA corruption in American history. It combined civil litigation, criminal prosecution, community organizing, and regulatory reform to dismantle a corrupt system and hold wrongdoers accountable. The case has been cited in multiple legal proceedings across Texas and has influenced HOA reform legislation. But beyond the legal significance, this story matters because it shows that homeowners are not powerless against tyrannical boards. Too many people suffer in silence, paying illegal fines and enduring harassment because they don't believe they can fight back. David Richardson proved that with determination, documentation, and proper legal strategy, even the most entrenched corrupt board can be defeated. The story also highlights the importance of HOA governance reform. Homeowner associations control trillions of dollars in residential property across America, yet they often operate with minimal oversight and transparency. Many boards abuse their authority because homeowners don't understand their rights or don't have the resources to challenge board actions. Stronger state laws protecting homeowner rights, mandatory financial audits, and easier recall procedures would prevent many cases of HOA abuse. If you're dealing with an HOA that's harassing you or seems corrupt, here's what you should do. First, request all governing documents and financial records in writing, citing your state's specific disclosure laws. If the board refuses or delays, that's a red flag suggesting possible corruption. Second, attend board meetings and ask questions about finances, contracts, and decision-making processes. Record meetings if your state allows it. Third, connect with other homeowners who may have similar concerns. Create a coalition and share information. Many battles are won through strength in numbers. Fourth, document everything religiously. Keep copies of all correspondence, take time-stamped photos of alleged violations, and maintain a detailed timeline of events. Fifth, consult with an attorney who specializes in HOA law. Many offer free initial consultations and can assess whether you have viable legal claims. Sixth, consider filing complaints with state regulatory agencies if your HOA is incorporated or registered with state authorities. Some states have dedicated HOA oversight offices. Seventh, if you uncover evidence of financial fraud, report it to local law enforcement and the district attorney's office. Criminal investigations can pressure boards to settle civil claims. Eighth, use social media and community organizing to raise awareness, but be careful not to make defamatory statements. Stick to provable facts and documents. Finally, remember that fighting an HOA is often a marathon, not a sprint. David Richardson's battle lasted 18 months from first violation notice to final settlement. But he won completely, and his victory transformed an entire community. The story of David Richardson versus the Meadowbrook Estates HOA Board is the ultimate example of how one determined homeowner with the right knowledge and strategy can defeat corruption and abuse of power. From a petty dispute over paint colors to an $847,000 settlement and criminal convictions, this case proves that HOA boards are not above the law and that homeowners have more power than they realize. If you're watching this video because you're dealing with your own HOA nightmare, remember David's story. Document everything, know your rights, build coalitions, follow the money, and don't be afraid to fight back legally. The system works when homeowners use it properly. Patricia Hendricks thought she was untouchable as HOA president. She's now serving 12 years in prison. Marcus Webb thought his self-dealing contracts would go unnoticed forever. He's in prison and owes $1.4 million in restitution. Diane Foster thought homeowners wouldn't challenge the board's authority. She was wrong. Your HOA might seem all-powerful, but remember that boards are legally required to act in homeowners' best interests. When they don't, they can be removed, sued, and even prosecuted. You have rights. Use them. And if this video helped you understand those rights better, please hit that like button, subscribe to Neighbor Wars HQ for more HOA horror stories and legal breakdowns, and drop a comment below telling me about your own HOA experiences. Have you dealt with a tyrannical board? Did you fight back? What happened? I want to hear your stories. Also, share this video with anyone you know who's dealing with HOA problems. The more homeowners understand their rights and legal options, the harder it becomes for corrupt boards to abuse their power. Knowledge is power, and community is strength. Together, we can hold HOA boards accountable and create communities where governing bodies serve homeowners instead of exploiting them. Thank you for watching Neighbor Wars HQ. Remember, you don't have to accept HOA tyranny. You have the power to fight back and win. Until next time, stay informed, stay organized, and never let a power-hungry board president convince you that illegal paint color fines are just part of homeownership. They're not. They're violations of law, and you can make boards pay for their abuses. See you in the next video.